The small town of Ravenswood was hidden in the heart of the forest and had always been known for its unsettling atmosphere. The townspeople lived simple lives. They worked from sunrise to sunset and went home to their families. Yet they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Walking home alone, the townspeople felt the need to look over their shoulders. The kids never played far from the main roads. They didn't even realize they avoided the shadows. Many of them claimed to have heard strange noises coming from the surrounding woods at night. The trees rose above them, and within the spaces between the trunks, some reported seeing strange figures watching from the shadows. The townspeople went about their lives, always careful to get home before dark and lock their doors behind them. No one had ever dared to investigate the source of their fear. That is, until Sarah. Sarah was fascinated by the stories of the woods. She wanted to know the truth, and was determined to find out what was causing the strange occurrences in her town. All of her friends were sure that she was crazy, but she begged them to come along. Armed with flashlights, a bit of food, and rolled up tents, they slowly moved towards the edge of the town. At the border, where the light vanishes into the shade of the trees, Sarah jumped forward, disappearing for a brief moment. Her friends were forced to follow her into darkness. They were met with silence that pressed on them. Sarah's friend tried to ask her to turn around and head back to the safety of the town, but the words were trapped in her throat. Sarah looked back and could no longer see where the forest stopped and the town began. Just a darkness that looked back at her. A twig snapped, and that's when the strange noises began. Whispers and footsteps, noises that they should be making, but they knew it wasn't coming from their group. They tried to ignore it, thinking it was just their imaginations playing tricks on them. But as the sounds grew louder and closer, they knew it was too late to turn back. Sarah and the rest of her friends ran to where they thought it came from, to find the friend that was always lagging behind, but he was gone without a trace. Sarah watched as her friends began panicking as the group realized that they were not alone. Something was waiting for them, watching them from the darkness. She quickly buried her fear and took charge, ordering everyone to stay together and search for their missing friend. They wanted to run. Everything was telling them to get out of there as soon as possible. But Sarah had brought them here, so they searched. All they found was a flashlight lighting up a small spot on the ground, which only deepened the darkness around them. No one could tell which way they came from. The blackness was only broken by a blur of a thin wall of trees. Their only option was to keep moving and find the way out. Suddenly, the group fell to their knees. The trees made way to a clearing, and as they brought their eyes up slowly, they didn't want to look, but their eyeballs were being dragged towards the sky. They were met with a figure standing in the center. It was tall and thin, with long claw-like fingers and eyes that would remain burned into their brain for the rest of their lives. The figure moved toward them in a way that made Sarah realize it was not human. It shifted, as if its limbs were disconnected. Control was gone. Sarah was running on fear, her friends forgotten. It chased them to the woods. Sarah knew one fall would mean death as she heard its raspy breathing getting closer and closer. She had lost track of how long they had been running. The figure seemed to be all around them, but they remained just out of reach long enough to see trees end and the town begin. Sarah and her friends finally made it back to the safety of their homes, but they couldn't shake the feeling that the figure was still watching them. They never spoke of their experience in the woods again, but they knew that it was still out there, waiting to claim its next victims. One is not enough, the being whispered to them as they tried to fall asleep. She didn't know what it did to her friend, but Sarah couldn't close her eyes without seeing the figure, its long limbs hunched over the unmoving body of her friend. The townspeople never went into the woods again, yet strange disappearances were reported. Every couple of years, missing children would appear in the papers and always gone without a trace. Sarah and her friends knew that the being was responsible, but could not get anyone to believe them. And so, the figure remained a mystery, a legend that was passed down through the generations, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the town's borders. Some say that if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the whispers and footsteps coming from the woods, and the screams of the lost souls it has taken. Sarah, however, never forgot the figure. She knew it was out there and wanted to know more. She secretly continued her own research, promising to find out what happened to the boy she brought into the woods who never came out.